Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of Level Up. I am Stephanie Reynolds, and this is the co host, Miss Jamie A Gill.
That's me.
She's playing a different role tonight. So the opening is a little different because she is also our guest for this evening. And before we get started, first I want to thank everyone who went out and bought Greta's book. She made it to an Amazon bestseller. Yay. What is it? What do
Right.
the kids do?
Clock
What do the
it,
kids
clock it.
do? She
Yeah, we
made it to
old.
the Amazon bestseller. So we are so excited for her. And I know it's just going to continue to go more places and do bigger things because it really is an amazing book and she is an amazing person. So congratulations, Greta. And thank you to everyone who watched episode 1
Yeah.
of Level Up. We're really looking forward to just giving you all great guest, great conversation. And for those of you all who are on this book writing journey, to hopefully give you some resources on how to actually bring your book into fruition too. So we are excited. But this week, like I said, our guest for today is Jamie A. Gill. um this particular guest is really special to me, right? So Jamie and I have a lot of history, we have a lot of backstory, and I feel like we have journeyed through life just in a lot of different ways, a lot of different capacities. And so I've been able to be a part of her author journey. And as she calls herself, she's a serial author and has written some amazing books. And so I'm really looking forward to being able to interview her and to talk to her from this perspective about her journey as an author. So, Jamie, thank you for being a guest tonight.
Thank you for having me, Stephanie, on Level Up, my new favorite podcast.
I know, right? Right. So, Jamie A. Gill, tell me, what made you decide to want to be an author?
Oof. I think the simple answer is I loved reading, and books from a very early age just brought me so much joy. Good grades in my family was rewarded by money, but also books. And so I knew that grandma, grandpa, and mommy and daddy would buy me new books if I kept good grades. So for me, it was just the joy that I experienced reading Curious George and Babysitter's Club and Nancy Drew, some of the first books I fell in love with, that I wanted to say thank you to the authors that brought me joy as a child. I wanted to kind of like pay it forward. And that's really why I began writing.
Hmm. That's interesting. So tell me a little bit about, so you have multiple books,
Yes.
right? So
Yes,
let's
ma'am.
go back to the very beginning.
Oh, my
The
baby.
very first one, your oldest baby.
Yes.
Tell
Yes.
me
Yes.
about Lessons for a Little Girl.
So Stephanie is correct. I refer to my books as children. I say I don't birth babies, I birth books. And because for me, becoming an author truly was and still is a birthing process. There, for Lessons for the Little Girl, I love telling this story. I will forever owe kudos and a thank you to Reverend Medina Pullings. She is a minister who was speaking at a women's conference at my childhood church, New Faith Baptist Church International in Matson. And she and I were talking after one of the sessions, and she said she wanted me to come and speak at a youth conference on the East Coast. And I just knew from being a participant of youth conferences that you have to have something. Young people they need a takeaway. You can go and give a great presentation, but you want something to be able to offer them. After I said, I got to write a book, I got to write a book, I got to write a book. And I went home. I'm an avid journaler. I'm not going to tell you guys how many journals I have and notebooks that I carry on a very regular basis, but it's a lot. And as I was just kind of flipping through my journal, I said, this is a book. So, believe it or not, Lessons for the Little Girl truly are pages from my journal, literally. I was just kind of in a stage of my life where I was reflecting on um, lessons that I had learned as a little girl, experiences that I had, everything from growing up in my childhood home to just the power of having my own space or reflecting about my grandparents. I was in a very reflective season of my life. And I wanted to be able to offer the young people, young ladies very specifically, just an opportunity to journal. We often tell people that mental health matters and all of these things, but how do you begin to teach young people what that looks like? And for me, it was just creating an opportunity and a space for them to reflect on their own thoughts. And so, Lessons for the Little Girl is really just a guided journaling where I share a story, I ask a question or a set of questions, and then I give young ladies an opportunity to write. As I was writing the book, I recognized that the book could not just be useful for young ladies, but also for older women. So many times in life, um, we get kind of we rush past our youth sometimes because of
Mhm.
life, right? Marriage, kids, responsibilities. And I wanted to be able to give older women an opportunity to tap back into the little girl that lives inside of us. I am an avid believer that, our younger selves are forever a part of us, but we often get disconnected because of life, because of responsibilities, because of the next age and stage of our life. And so I wanted Lessons for a Little Girl to be an invitation for young women and older women to kind of meet together and remember what it's like to be a little girl and to have dreams and aspirations and to be fearless and to be curious and to just have that joy that you often see in children's eyes and faces, and even sometimes fears, and tap into those places and be able to grow and learn from them in a healthy way.
So your face comes alive, right, when you start to talk about the whole idea of your inner little girl and learning these life lessons and all the things that life teaches us, right? Along the way, how they one lesson at a time we become who we're supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
So you talked about the power of reading a book, but what lesson did the little girl in you learn as you wrote it?
I get emotional about it because I have a picture that I'm gonna share with you guys. And I started this habit when I was in college. I went to Lewis University and I kept a picture of me,
Ah, the little girl.
little Jamie, right?
Yes.
Um, I kept her on my wall, and I was in college, and I remember looking at her, and I was kind of fighting depression because you're in college, you're trying to figure out who you are and what you're supposed to do, and I just looked at, and I was like, "Where are you?" Like,
Mhm,
I felt so
mhm,
disconnected from this
mhm.
little girl, and so writing helped me to realize that she was still there, and um, very honestly, that I had neglected her. And this little girl was so hope filled and so carefree and so loving, so loving. And the world has a way of often making you experience disappointment and hurt, and it shifts you. And at that time in my life, I didn't want to lose that. I didn't want to lose the joy and the love that I so freely give on a regular basis. Naturally, I'm very childlike in that way that I just naturally love people. I'm naturally trusting. And life teaches you that that's always that's not always safe. And so writing lessons for the little girl for me was the balancing act, right? Of how you can take the best parts of this stage of your life and merge it with the best parts of adulthood. I never wanted to be a victim in life,
Mhm.
and I've never wanted to be like the traumatized person that, you ever encounter somebody and you're like, ooh, they need to go to counseling, or ooh, they need to go deal with that. And I just never wanted to be. I've had a very, very good life. I've had some challenges like everyone else, and I've gone through some very tough things, but I always considered my life very good. So writing for me helped me to learn the balance of both worlds, the best of both worlds. Not dreaming or staying stuck in the past of the youth, but just taking the best parts of it to apply it to my adulthood and honoring the little girl inside of me and helping all of her dreams to come true. And so that's what writing did.
For someone who, because we're talking about obviously your book, but I think that the story goes so far beyond what's in those pages, and it goes so far beyond what people read in that small amount of time. And so tell us a little bit about who Jamie A. Gill is, um, as the author behind the books. Because I think it's important. What I love about books and I love about being an author is there is a connection that happens when you're reading someone's story, right? And where you're able to not only see them, but you see yourself. It's like, I think we talked about it with Greta. It's like a mirror, right? You're able to see pieces of yourself. And I think so many of us as women and men can relate to this idea of life changing the little girl or the little boy in us and
Yeah.
coloring in different places in ways that shift the way that we see the world, the way that we see ourselves, and sometimes can drift us away from or cause us to drift away from who we really are, right? It kind of, because we build up layers, we build up all of these barriers and things to protect the little girl, and in the process we end up losing them, so, or losing her. So tell me a little bit about your journey, your story, who Jamie A. Gill is.
When people meet me in person, they often say, you're such an alpha female. You're strong and you're fearless and you're independent, and when I was younger, I used to love that term, right? This alpha, like I am woman, hear me roar, you know. But as I've gotten older, I really don't like that phrase of alpha woman or alpha female. I don't think that most people, the general public, recognize how sensitive I am. Stephanie, because we've been friends for over 20 years, but I am very, very sensitive. And I I relate it to my heart because I really am a lover girl. And I don't mean that in the romantic sense at all, not taking away from that, but I genuinely love people. And I see the best in people. I want the best. I literally, my friends have often said, Jamie, you just believe in like gumdrops and fairy tales. Like you just believe in this utopia. Y'all have said it. I always am like, guys,
True.
they're great, or it's gonna be good. Like I am a positivity princess. I'm just overly optimistic, and that causes me to be very, very sensitive. And so when things do hurt me or things don't work out, it's like traumatizing to me. And I'm shocked. I am ashamed to admit this at my old age, but I'm still shocked when bad things happen. Like, what?
Yeah.
Like, it blows my mind. And I think because I have such pure intentions when I meet people, like I truly am a person that when I encounter you, I meet you, like I want good for you. I want the interaction to always be positive. And I'm not saying that like I'm a perfect person by any regard. I'm just very, very sensitive. And I think a lot of that pours out into my writing. I'm also an
That's so
over
fun. I was literally getting ready to ask you how that impacts your writing process.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it pours out into the pages, and I'm an overthinker. And as being one of my editors, you were like, Jamie, you don't need to say that 7 times. Like I just I am a run-on sentence girly, comma, 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 comma.
Yes. Period, please. Period, delete.
I am a comma girl. Like if there is a list to be made, I'm making it. And I think that also, man, I hate to admit this out loud, but it's just the truth. It also speaks to my insecurities, right? So I tend to over explain because I never want to be misunderstood. That's one of my biggest fears in life is just for people to misunderstand me, my motives, my actions, my words. And so I will write to exhaustion, speak to exhaustion so that you like, do you understand what I'm trying to say? Do you
Mhm,
understand? And because I just like clarity, I like peace.
mhm.
Like I really am. I often joke and say that I was born in the wrong time frame. Like I really was supposed to be a hippie and a flower girl, a flower child, just kind of frolicking through the hills with a flower in my hair and a long
Yeah,
skirt on, a
yeah.
long
I
dress
get it.
on. So, but I deeply love people. I'm highly sensitive and I'm deeply creative. And so all of those things are beautiful, but they can also cause kind of like an inner chaos
Mhm,
because I don't know what book to start or when to end it. And that's when I've really had to tap into the last thing I'll say about myself is my deep faith, where I just have to allow God to kind of tell me when to stop, when to
mhm.
check lanes, and when to let things go. And that can be difficult sometimes for me as well. So
You know another thing that I have learned about you is your vulnerability, right? So you're very vulnerable. How important is that for an author, right? To be authentic, to be vulnerable, to be open, despite whatever fears or hesitations or um, just insecurities that you may have.
Mhm. um, knowing the truth about yourself is your superpower, not your weakness. And that's what I want every current author and aspiring author to know. There is no part of me or my story that anyone can ever use against me. I
Mm,
know it already. And so when you kind of own your stuff, then no one can use it to weaponize you. And the
mm,
importance of it is as humans, people need to be able to identify with you in order to see the power in their own stories. I often say that churches all across the world spend so much time speaking about the deity of Jesus that they forget one of the greatest parts is that he chose to put on a cloth of skin and become a human so he could identify with us.
yeah.
And that ability to identify with other people allows us to create community, that allows us to recognize that we're not in this world by ourselves, that there is someone else going through the things that we feel like we're the only one going through. And so that ability to identify is so powerful. And so it's difficult. I don't dare want to sit here like saying spilling my guts or telling my business is easy. And I think that I really haven't done it in any of my books completely. I think that I kind of grazed the surface because my books have the books that I've written so far have kind of crossed generations, that I've kind of kept it kind of light. But the books that I'm working on now, I am going a little bit deeper. I've given myself permission to be a little bit deeper because I know that the world needs it and I need it, because I believe that also shows healing.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
when you're afraid to go deep, it's because it still hurts. It's still bleeding. It's still, sensitive. And so being able to go deeper at this stage of my life is a sign of my own growth and healing, but also as an invitation for others that I want you to also give yourself the same permission. So,
Love that because there are a lot of people who are sitting on best-selling books,
yeah.
transformational books, books that will
Mm.
shift people's lives because they're not comfortable yet with being able to share the the depth of their stories,
Right.
right? Whether it's
Mhm.
from fear or embarrassment, shame, all the things that the devil uses to keep us from actually, moving forward in purpose. And so I love that we're talking about this because my prayer is that it frees someone to do one of two things, if not both. One, what I love about writing is it helps to identify where you are, right? Because if you're writing and you get to a place where you're like, "Ooh, I'm not ready to
Mhm.
do that yet," it
Yeah.
shows that okay, maybe there's still some places there that need to be healed, right? And that's a great thing. Like it's good that we recognize where we still need to grow and heal so that we can in fact heal. And then the other thing is um that I hope that it does is that it helps someone to be able to get over that last little hump to say,
Yeah.
okay, I can do this. Not just because I'm healed, but because there's someone else who needs to be healed because of my
Absolutely.
story,
I'll give you a superficial story. I actually wrote about this story in Lessons for a Little Girl too. When I was in junior high, I was the first girl in my junior high school that wore a weave ponytail. First girl. And I've always just kind of marched to the beat of my own drum. I never was the girl who kind of did what everybody else did. And so I remember being in a general assembly. It was a game show at our junior high school.
I remember
And
this
so it's
story.
this
Yeah.
huge,
Yeah.
everybody's
Mhm.
excited. We don't have
Yeah.
class. And it was a group of girls behind me, and I heard them kind of snickering and whispering, and you kind of hear commotion, but I'm not worried about it. I'm with my friends. We're excited. We trying to get picked next to be on the game show. And all of a sudden, I feel this snatch out of my hair. And these girls had pulled this ponytail out of my hair, and it was on the Florida bleachers. And of course, in true junior high student fashion, everyone's looking at me and laughing. Now, I had hair in junior high, so it wasn't like, they pulled the ponytail out and I have a huge bald spot or something in my hair. I just thought the ponytail was cute because it was curly and had little spiral curls. And I remember picking the ponytail up and running out of the gym. And I went to the office, and I just wanted to go home. I wanted to go home. I wanted to go home. I wanted to withdraw from school. I was never coming back to the school again in my life. And I'll never forget, the principal came out and was talking to me, and he said, I understand why you want to go home. And he says, and I understand why you even may never want to come back.
Hmm.
And he says, but if you do that, doesn't it mean that they win? And it was kind of like that cliffhanger that he left
Yeah.
me on. My mom came and picked me up, and I went home and I thought about that.
Yeah.
I returned to the school the very next day with that ponytail in my head. And that wasn't the only time in my life I was embarrassed, but like I had to think about it. Like, why was I embarrassed? Was I embarrassed from like the shock of the moment?
Yeah.
But it was nothing to be embarrassed about. And that's when I began to learn to own my stuff.
Mhm.
Yes, this is my fake ponytail that I could put on for versatility. And fast forward, when we went to high school, those girls that pulled the ponytail out of my hair were the weave queens in high school. Weave queens. And so I was a trendsetter and didn't even realize it at
Right.
that young age, right? But because maybe they didn't have the courage to do it first, or they didn't know to do it, whatever the case may be, or their
Mhm.
parents didn't go buy it for 'em. Maybe their mother said no and they was mad because they mom, I don't know, and it doesn't matter at this stage of my life. But I remember that just kind of being a pivotal decision for me, that I can take this vulnerability
Yeah.
and use it as my superpower instead of hiding under a rock or coming back to school the next day like I never wore the ponytail. Nope. I marched back right into school the very next day with that ponytail in the same spot. And I remember the principal seeing me and he was like, "It's good to see you today, Miss Gill." And I was just like, and I just felt proud. I felt
Mm.
proud of
Oh,
myself. And
yeah.
it's not always that easy, right? There
Right.
sometimes we do go hide under a rock for a few days, but I just remember that little girl, that version of Jamie is who I try to tap into when it's time for me to be strong again. So,
It's courage, right?
yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
for many of us who have decided to write a book, like, the first step was courage, even if it was courage to obey,
Yes,
courage to, start diving into your story,
yes,
whatever that process was for you, it always starts with
yes,
courage,
yes.
you know? Well, speaking of lessons for the little girl too, what led you to write the second version? And follow-up question, are you writing a 3?
That's a good question. I felt like the little girl needed to grow up, right?
Mhm.
Not die,
Mhm.
because someone actually said that to me. They
Mm.
said it's time to let the little girl die. And
Mm.
I knew what they meant, but I remember when I heard it, I was almost offended, right?
Right.
And
Right.
not because of who, because this is somebody I love, very good girlfriend, to
Mhm.
me. So she didn't mean it in a malicious way. She was just saying that it was time to kind of own the adult version of Jamie.
Right. To mature.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so Lessons for the Little Girl 2 was Lessons for Little Girl 2 is two things. One, it was the rites of passage
Mhm.
of you can be this little girl, but you have to grow up.
Mhm.
Not even an
Right.
invitation, like you
Right.
have to. And two, it also was to pay homage to the women in my life who
Mm.
were great examples to me. And so on the cover of Lessons for the Little Girl 2 is my mom and my grandmothers and my godmother and my aunts and my mom's cousin Linda, who had this big laugh. Like I will never, Linda had a gap in her teeth and you could hear her laugh from 3 blocks away. And God rest her beautiful soul. But just the women I remember being this little girl looking up to, saying I want to be like them because of this, right? Because cousin Linda was to me, she was woman, right? Like she embraced her femininity, even though she wasn't a very small woman. She was voluptuous and beautiful and powerful, and my mom being all of the things to me that she always has been, just beautiful and brave, and you know impact the community, and my grandmother being a no nonsense diva lady. You did not play, will be respected, never will be tested. That was
Right.
just grandma. Or, my grandma Lula, who just deeply loved family and had every cooking utensil in the whole wide world in her kitchen. My aunt Maxine being a fashionista and a designer, and my aunt Gail, who just made me feel like I was not her daughter, but when I entered the room, I just felt so special and seen and loved. And, my godmother was like the pillar of faith to me, and, bought me uh, was the introduction of me speaking at church for the first time, and teaching me the important, like truly walking me to what being a woman of faith looks like. And so Lessons for Little Girl was necessary to show that there is a maturation process as women,
Mhm.
that womanhood is not a destination, that it's a journey. I've often thought about writing a lessons for little girl 3, but or a series, not even necessarily just a 3, but just to kind
Mhm.
of continue the journey. And I haven't come to a conclusion yet. You know, it's kind of one of the things that, do I kind of leave that for now, write some other things, and then come back and revisit her? Or is it something that I kind of do every couple of years? Because
Mhm.
as women, there is so many facets to us.
We're constantly evolving.
Yes, we're constantly evolving. And I don't think that people realize that.
Mhm.
We kind of feel like once we get to a certain age, I'll say this, younger women, I don't think we realize that.
Mhm.
Women in their 60s and 70s, they truly understand that. As I continue to have conversations with my elders, they know that life is an evolution. But I
Right.
think that us younger women kind of feel like we get to this spot and we should be the women we were destined to be, right?
We
And
have
we should have
arrived.
we have arrived.
Yeah.
But that's not true. I change my hair 7 times a year, so there's no way
Right.
that I can have all of life's answers figured out at 46. That's just impossible to think, and so, I don't know. Maybe if you guys leave a comment if you think I should, then you let me know. I will if you tell me I should.
Well, I think that, it speaks to, as you said, the journey is constantly going, right? And we're constantly learning if we allow ourselves to.
Absolutely.
And I think revisiting the little girl at various stages of our lives is important, because I think in the same way that we never have arrived, there's always still places that we need to address, right?
Yeah.
That you may not realize. Like, there are some things I never realized about myself until I got married. There
Mhm,
were some things and some places in my life that I never addressed or realized were there until I had children, until
mhm,
I had my daughter, and
mhm,
then there were some other things when I had my son, and then there were some other things when I, got my first, real, like, big girl
girl
job.
job. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and so
That's true.
there's constantly, and I feel like that is how God designed it, because it consistently keeps us dependent on him,
Absolutely.
and
1000%. Yes. Yeah.
searching for that place of purpose, and purpose is constantly changing,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
he's constantly saying, okay, do something, and who we've been called to be remains constant, but how we articulate that in various life stages changes. So
Stephanie, you
my
know
vote.
this.
Mhm.
They said you said your what? Your what? Your vote?
No, I was saying my vote is to keep writing, but I'll
Oh,
drop it in the chat to make it official.
and as you're sitting here, I'm literally getting like this chapter, and I'm like, Lord, have mercy. And I'll give you one of the first things that dropped in my head when you asked the question is the chapter in Lessons for Little Girl that talks about losing my dad.
Mm,
And unfortunately, that is something you and I have in common. And as women, losing your daddy shifts you like majorly. And as a unwed woman, it was really like life altering for me. I remember literally the moment after my father took his last breath. Literally. And it's crazy that this was my first thought. Not, after I'm like, I can't believe my daddy's gone because I'm sitting here staring at him. The very next thought was, I'm never getting married, never having kids. That was because my dad would not be able to be there to witness it. That was the first thought I had. And I had a friend, I went to lunch with a friend, and I kept saying, "Yeah, because after my dad died, and after my dad died," and he just was looking at me and he says, "Jamie, stop time stamping your life to your father's death because you're forcing yourself to re experience that loss."
yeah, yeah.
And I didn't even realize I was saying it, right? So that was the lesson for the little girl, that honor my father's life, but I mean, my life it only had 2 chapters, before my daddy died and after.
Right.
Everything I said was before my daddy died, and I didn't even recognize it, but that was the grieving little girl. My daddy
Yeah.
was gone, and so it wasn't until he said something to me that I had to rethink, and I talk about in that chapter how many times do we drag ourselves back to this place of trauma or loss, or after I was sexually assaulted, or after my divorce, or after I lost a family member or a child or whatever the case, or after I lost my job. We keep dragging ourselves back to these places. And so God is too good and had been too good to me. And my father had lived a very full life. And there was so much more to say other than that. And so that was the first thing I thought about when you asked me, was I writing a book, and kind of how who I was in the moment that I used to say that to who I am now, and
Yeah.
how. And so you're right, the lessons do continue. So we'll see. I'm not going to
We'll
say no. We'll
see.
see.
We'll
We'll see what
see. Okay.
happens. Stay
Well,
tuned.
yes, stay tuned. And I encourage everyone to go out and purchase both of the books, because again, it gives you, as much as it's Jamie's story, I it's also an opportunity for you to be prompted to revisit the little girl in you. Maybe the little girl who is still stuck in a place, because something happened. Or maybe it's you've forgotten some things about the little girl that made you special and made you who you are. And somewhere down the line, you've lost sight of that. But I think getting that book and reading through it makes us intentional about having to revisit some places in our lives through the eyes of Jamie as she authored it. So they're available on Amazon. Go out and get them. They're amazing reads, and they're short reads. They're easy
Yeah.
reads. They're like throw it in your purse, read it as you're on the train or in the back of a Uber or whatever. I just went to Arizona and they had those what are they, Waymo cars, like the
Mhm.
auto driving cars.
Yeah.
So while you're back there, to keep you from freaking out at the fact that nobody is driving the
Driving the
car,
car.
read the book, right?
That's right.
So they're available on Amazon. But let's transition, because then you kind of stayed in the same vein, but not really,
Mhm.
but kind of.
Mhm.
And you
Mhm.
authored Lessons for the Little Boy. Tell me where that came, because the first thing I'm sure people will say is, how is a woman going to give a lesson to a little boy? So
That's
for all of the
favorite.
naysayers, let's start there so that you don't stop listening right there, but you hear, you understand the method to the madness. So
That's the problem with women. I was trying to tell a man how to be a
right.
man. I love it.
Right.
I get excited when I get. So Lessons for the Little Boy was born at a book signing for Lessons for a Little Girl. I was at a shout out to my friend Patrick Hudson, who had a comedy show, and I had a book signing, and a wonderful gentleman, Mr. Wilson, walked up to me, and I said, "Oh, so who's this book for? Your daughter, your wife?" And he was like, "Me." And I said, this, this book that said Lessons for a Little Girl.
Right, right,
You're clearly a man, Mr. Lloyd.
right,
You're clearly a man. And he says, if there is something good that women can learn, I know that as a man, there's something that I can learn too.
mm. Very progressive.
Immediately I felt convicted. Like, how did I leave the boys out? So
Yeah.
I remember going out into the parking lot and calling my publisher that moment. Like, I have to write Lessons for Little Boy. We got to get it out by June. Like, I'm like, this book has to be written. He was like, Jamie, relax. Let's get Lessons for Little Girl out first. Let's,
Right. Mm,
what is this book going to be about? Who's going to write it? What
right.
do you want it to say? So Lessons for Little Boy was created because I live in the world with men, right? And as much as I care, pardon me, about the mental health of women, I have equally as much care for men. Uh, my father, my grandfather, my godfather were men, are men.
Mhm.
My brothers,
Yeah.
my neighbors, my
Mhm.
coworkers, and we live in this world together. And so I did not write Lessons for the Little Boy. I created the platform for 13 men to have the conversation. So when people say, Jamie, what did you I wrote one chapter in that book. Basically, it was saying welcome and congratulations for going on this journey. And I shared a story or an experience with my dad that I'm not going to go into because I want you to read it. Um, that I recognize that if men and women, we do not learn how to communicate and engage properly, how we're going to do more harm to each other than good. And so after I open the door, I step away and there's nothing else for me to say. And so I'm just grateful for the vision that God gave me for the book. The men that are in this book are absolutely amazing. I mean, they talk about vulnerability. You know, women, we're used to kind of spilling our guts and crying, as I've cried clearly already on this podcast. But for men, it's it's not appropriate. We've lived in a country that it's not appropriate for men to share their feelings, or it's a sign of weakness. And I want to change the narrative that men need to share their emotions and their experiences because they're just as important for them to get it out. And for women who read the book, it's important that you learn their perspectives. Men and women operate differently. We
Very.
hear things different, we see things differently, and we process things differently. And a man is not going to behave like a woman does, and vice versa. And so, and it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay that it's different, because that's what creates the balance, I think, within the world. And so, for me, writing this book was my way of telling men, I see you,
Mm.
um, I need you, and I appreciate you, and thank you. Thank you for all that you've endured, as men, that we don't always understand. And so
Mm.
being able to just them to share what it's like for them to become caretakers and
Yeah.
then lose their mom, and how that makes the little boy in them feel, or the story of being a husband and a girl dad, and
Yeah.
hoping, if they're preparing their daughters for the world, and or their dads not being around, and how that helps develop them or not develop them as men, the things that they felt like they missed, or their dad being around and still feeling neglected. Just the amazing, amazing stories. I try not to show bias amongst my children, uh, but oftentimes I get so excited about Lessons for the Little Boy because I really feel as if it's truly, um, it's special.
Yeah.
Lessons for Little Boy is just, it's so special to my heart. All my books are, but Lessons for Little Boy really, really is, because I want men to be well.
Yeah. As I'm listening to you talk about it, it's sending off all of these, flares in my head in terms of just the importance. I really believe that if you're a man, right, getting lessons for the little girl will be beneficial for you. If you're a woman, if you're raising a son or raising, like, it's important that we understand, because it's sometimes difficult to understand the opposite sex
Yes.
because it is so different from
Because they're
how we
weird,
function,
right?
and
See,
they
that's how we see it. We see them
that's
as
how they
weird.
see us. They see
Yes.
us as, "She's so emotional,"
Yeah. Why
and
she
I'm like,
crying again?
"You're so cold," And it's like, "You don't have to do what I do. I have to come home and I have to do this, 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 and that, and while you're, laying down," and they're like, "Yeah, but you don't understand that I go to work every day trying to make sure that I can be who I need to be for my family."
Yes,
And so because we don't acknowledge the differences, we don't honor the differences.
absolutely.
And we become antagonistic with each other instead of recognize that we complement. And if we really supported each other, like, we would be unstoppable
Yeah.
together, whether it's in a marriage, whether it's in a partnership, whether it's in a business relationship, a friendship, or whatever. And so I think getting these books gives the opposite sex insight into not only how we function, but how we hurt And I think that that's important too. Like, I need to know how my husband hurts, how my son hurts, because
Yeah,
he hurts differently than my
yeah,
daughter is going to hurt.
yeah.
My husband hurts differently than how I'll hurt, and vice versa. So
And
I
then how do
encourage,
we heal differently too
how do
from those
we,
places,
yes,
right?
yes.
Because we mask them differently.
Mm-hmm,
And where women hide their hurt by coming out overly aggressive oftentimes, right?
mm-hmm,
And men do that too, and
mm-hmm.
sometimes, but sometimes it causes men to pull back. And so they become more quiet and
Yeah.
they become less responsive. Where we
Mm-hmm.
just like,
Right, right, right. Right,
because
right,
we're
right.
hurt. I told someone just the other day, I was at work and this lady was ordering for some food from a man. I don't know what their relationship was to one another. And she was like, you could tell she was getting frustrated. She was trying to be understanding because he had just left chemo, but she didn't know how to fix it. And she's like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna order this food and he's not gonna eat. And I just kind of stopped him and I was quiet and I said, do you know that the root of anger is often sadness? And she just was like, and I said, I know what he's going through, not in the same way. And so she couldn't believe. So I just kind of began to share my cancer journey with her. And she, all of a sudden, and I said, so give him a little rope. I said, give him a
Yeah,
little, a little space. I said, he's trying to figure out how strong man can't be strong right now. And he has to be okay with that because his body's fighting.
mm-hmm.
And you could tell like this light bulb went off for her because she was used to him being strong and having
Yeah,
the answers and
yeah,
having and it's different. So we not only hurt different, but we heal from hurt different. And
yeah,
it doesn't give either sex the room to be disrespectful or mean, right? But I think that if we just had grace,
right. And
extended
empathy.
grace and
Yeah,
empathy for one,
yeah,
and that's, thank you for that word, empathy, just recognizing that they're going through something, and how do I support that?
yeah,
How do I support them through that? Because it's not about having the answer. And as women, um, men are often fixers, right? Like men just want to fix it. What's wrong, baby? What you need? Let me
mhm,
go get it. Let me go do
mhm,
it. And as women, we have to recognize that because they are natural fixers, or wanting to fix it, that we have to step back sometimes. We can't then become the fixers for them. We can't fill in that gap for them. We have to allow them to and let them tell us or show us how we need to fix it in the various relationships that we have in our life. And so I think it's a beautiful partnership book for men and women to begin to have tough conversations.
yeah,
um, People in romantic relationships often don't know each other's love languages,
right.
and so that becomes difficult. And then in work environments, you often have managers that have so many different personalities that they have to manage and deal with, right? That do they cookie cutter their leadership or do they individualize? And so human relationship is a very, very complicated, multi-layered experience. And I just hope that in the time on this earth that the Lord allows me, that there is something that I may be able to do or something that I may be able to write to just give us an opportunity to learn how to just love each other and deal with each other a little bit better. So
Yeah, because relationships are, someone told me this, and a pastor told me this. It had to be 20 years ago, 15 years ago. But anyway, that the currency of the kingdom is people, is relationships. Like,
yeah,
relationships will get you to places money will never take you,
absolutely.
influence,
Yeah.
accent, whatever. Like, when you know how to effectively engage with people and relate with people and or relate to people, like, that is a very powerful thing. And so it's fitting because you are a relational girl,
Yeah,
right?
I
You
am.
you love relationship, you
Right.
love people. There's no place that I've ever gone with you that somebody wasn't like, Jamie, and I'm the introvert, right? So I'm just like, I'm like, this is so much. I just want to go home, right? Because I'm just like COVID for me was like, yes, I
Yeah,
don't. Zoom
having
is
on
like the
nerves.
best thing for me. I don't have to go. Nobody has to come. Like it's just the best. So but you're the complete opposite, right? Where it's just like you love to be around people. And I think that that is a skill to be able to effectively relate to people, specifically, even just the opposite sex. So I don't know what you're doing with the books at this particular moment.
Me neither, girl.
What I will say is it needs to be something like, and I even see it beyond just books, but I see it as like these creating these spaces for men and women to, like you said, come together and have tough conversations and just be able to see through the other person's viewpoint for a
Yeah.
minute.
Let,
Um
let me, I feel led to say this,
mm,
especially for people that may be feeling like they're under attack right now. Like it's just a lot going on. Often know that your greatest place of purpose will also be your greatest place of pain. I know that I'm a relationship builder naturally. Like it's something that I don't even have to. I can walk in a room and know what to say to people and how to I don't, and this is, I don't say this egotistically. Like God literally gives me like bloop, like these deposits. That's the only way that I can say it, where I can see someone and I can just know, and not always, but I could just have this, it's not work for me. It's just this natural desire to want to engage with people. But that is also where I struggle the most.
mhm.
I have, I am, if you would have told me at this age that I would be single at 46 and not, and never married with no children, I would have laughed you silly, right? And but I know now, because of my life and walk with God, that that's a part of the, that has been a part of the plan, because I've needed to be, right? I've needed to be. I have a friend, he says to me all the time, Jamie, you're never going to get married because you're called to the world and your husband will not be able to compete with the world, right? And I don't know if that's true or not, but I love the thought of the statement, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes when we say we want to be used by God, when we say we think it's this beautiful, glitzy, glamorous pie in the sky experience, but know that there is a give and take. That in order to do some of the things, that there's something you're going to have to um what did Jesus say in the Bible? Um the scripture where he says, let the dead bury the dead
Mhm.
and come
Mhm.
and follow me,
Mhm.
or lay down all of your wait, pick, come follow me. We have to kind of leave our ideas, and sometimes that's our physical jobs of what we're doing, right, when we encounter God, and sometimes that's our mindsets or our perspectives or our plans. And I don't know, and this is really not about being married, but I just feel led to say this, that when you're pursuing your purpose and your passion, you're exactly where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
I think about the times that I've been engaged. It was a couple. And and nothing against the gentleman, right? Nothing against the gentleman at all. But they were not where I was supposed to be. And it's not because they did something wrong or they were horrible individuals. It just was not, that's not what I was supposed to be doing. I was getting ready to enter a marriage because that's what I wanted to do at that time. I thought it was time to get married.
Right.
It was time to be a
Right.
wife. It was time to be a
Mhm.
mom, because that TikTok clock was, and God is like, no, that's not how this is going. And so being able to retrospect, look at back at those times in my life. Thank God he didn't answer my prayer the way that I
Mhm.
was begging him to, because I just wouldn't have been a good wife. And most women won't admit, I wouldn't have been a good wife. I wouldn't have been a good mother. And I know people say God give you what you need once you get there, but no, not no. No, you just have to admit that some people are not supposed to be athletes.
Mhm.
Everybody's not a good dancer, right? The
Yeah.
rhythm, you just can't catch that beat, and that's okay. You're meant to be a mathematician, or you're supposed to be a really good inventor, and you're supposed to build things, or an architect, or whatever. Do not I am not going to spend the rest of my life comparing my life to other people's assignments.
Right.
If
Because
God
you
has
don't
called me,
know. You don't know what it takes.
absolutely.
I love that because you know the saying that says I was built for this, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
There is a weight that comes with every assignment that not everybody can carry,
Yeah.
right? Not everybody has the capacity. So everything in you has been built precisely, intentionally, specifically to carry the weight of the purpose that God has given for you. And like you said, sometimes we look and we're like, "Man, I wish I was doing that or I wish I had that." And God is like, "But if you did,
Mhm.
it would break you, right? Cuz you're not built for that." The same way that if you tried to live my life, you're not built for it, right? And I say that in general terms, right? Like we're not built to walk other people's journeys. And the lie of the enemy is to make us envious
Mhm.
or to make us feel like we're missing out on something. And God is like, no, like just submit to what I'm saying for you, and you will see that it will all come together and it will all make sense. Because even from the person who's married and with kids, there are certain things I can't do because I have a husband and
Yeah,
children. I
yeah,
can't just wake up and travel the world,
right.
Like
And I
I would
can.
love
I
it.
gotta go, I
And
gotta
you
go.
can. Yes.
I don't
It's
have to
like
put
I'm
a
not the one you
dog at
call
the
to go
dinner.
with you. Cause I'm like, I got a whole clan with me. I gotta make sure that my husband has, this and my kids. Like I'm not and I think there's beauty in being able to find value where you are.
Love your story. That's why I'm an
Mm.
author, because I
Yeah.
want people to fall in love with their story. You can appreciate my story, but
Yeah.
love your
I love
story.
that.
Every time I go to the airport, you speak about traveling, and I see parents with more than one kid juggling strollers and luggage and finding passports. I say, God bless you.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
y'all are the real superheroes. I would be nuts. A kid would be left on the car. And people are like, Jamie, no. Yes, yes. I love children. I love relationship. I would have been Elizabeth Taylor. I will be on my 13th husband by now. Like I look, to my mom and I had a conversation. To thy own self be
Be
true.
true. Yeah.
Be true. I love love. But young Jamie, look, something get on my nerve too bad. My second
Yeah.
fiance used to say that to me all the time. Jamie, you do not control the on and off switch to this relationship. And I'm like, yes, I do. If I'm off, it's off.
It's the second fiance part for me. It was it was my second fiance.
If it's off, I would take that ring off quick. Like, I don't need this. Just
That's so fun.
oh my God. I have so much patience sometimes, right? But when I don't, I don't. And it wasn't, again, he wasn't a bad guy, like at
Yeah.
all. But I was trying to force fit something that wasn't
Yeah.
supposed to be. And when you can learn to surrender,
Mhm.
right?
Yes. Yep.
Truly, like
Yep.
you can really find joy and
Yeah.
peace and happiness. I
Yeah.
have a very fulfilled life as and this is a person who's going through some things,
Mhm.
right? I'm going
Yeah.
through a couple of things, and but I have joy unspeakable that
Yeah.
I don't understand it. Sometimes I feel crazy because I'll find myself sitting somewhere just smiling
Yeah.
out of appreciation and gratitude for life, and and for not being anywhere other than where I'm supposed to be. I'm living in a state I said I would never live in. Never. But it's exactly where I'm supposed to be. And sometimes when I meet somebody, or I'm having an experience that I know that it's only because I live in this state that I'm having this experience. If I hadn't have said yes, to coming here and being here and staying here, I wouldn't be able to have this beautiful experience. And so God is full of amazing surprises if we truly just truly surrender and stop comparing our lives. That's fall in love with your story. If that's any message I can give to people about being an author, is about just that. Just love your own story.
Love that. I feel like that's a perfect way place to stop.
Yeah.
Um, so go get the books.
All
Lessons
of
for the
them.
little girl, lessons
Yes.
for the little girl too, lessons for the little boy,
And we
all
can't forget about faith,
available.
failure, success.
Yes, faith,
Yes.
failure, and
Yes.
success. Oh yeah, that one
Yeah.
too.
I
Real quick,
sneak
in
them
like
in there.
30 seconds, 15 seconds. What's faith, failure, success?
Faith, Failure, Success is an opportunity for five authors to come together and talk about I am, I can, I will. And we all share experiences that we've individually gone through, that we've said those statements I am, I can, I will. And in my particular story, I talk about everything we've just shared about being as a woman. People often ask me, whereas, I'm married, do I have kids? Those are the first questions. They don't ask me, did I go to college, or do I have a degree, or what are my philanthropic efforts, or do I
Mhm.
serve the community? Those are questions that they ask women. They always ask us about husband and children. And so for many years of my life, I I saw my value based off those things. And it wasn't until I had to kind of remind myself that my walk is different and I fell in love with my story, that I began to recognize my superpower. And I began to recognize the fact that if somebody needed me to speak at an event, I didn't have to get babysitters. I didn't have to make sure my husband's laundry was washed for the week. I didn't have to do any of those things. I didn't have to put the dog at the sitter. I literally can get up and go and maneuver however I want. And I also recognize that if I had all of those other responsibilities, that I wouldn't have been able to be fully present to take care of my parents, and to be present with my mom in her retirement years and help her to create her best life as a senior. And that brings me so much joy, because anybody that knows me know how much I love my mama.
Yes, you love
And
your mama.
being able to give back to her all that she gave to me, and keeping this little girl happy and spoiled and taken care of, like, to be able to have that opportunity is truly the greatest gift that God could ever give me. And so that's what faith, failure, success is learning to love your story. It really is.
Yeah, and one thing, because as you were talking, it hit me because I was looking at you, right? Because I'm interviewing you, but you're also like sister friend, right?
Yeah.
So as you're
She know
talking,
my
I'm
business and my
right,
secrets.
and
Don't
I'm
ask her.
looking like I need to make sure that she and you mean it, right? And
Yeah.
to truly love your story doesn't mean that you don't sometimes feel a way.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that sometimes you have these moments where you're like, I wish, or what if, or all of maybe some regret or whatever, but it anchors you in a way where it's like you can have those feelings, but it doesn't sink you. You don't live there, right? You can still. And so as you were talking, it was like, okay, she means like she
Yeah.
really, it's an authentic place. And I love that. And I think that it's a place that we all need to get to, where we truly love our story in a way that anchors us and is a foundation for us building the life, not necessarily that we expected or wanted, but the life that we were destined, that we were purposed to live.
And know this, it's so much better. It's so much better than any story that I could have created for myself. And I think, like, the running joke is, I only want a husband now when I gotta lift heavy stuff, or when I'm having some arm issues now, and I had to put this vent up back in the ceiling, and I was like, "Husband, like, where are you?" I only, I need a Mr. Honeydew, right? Just because I need a honey to do some stuff. But I mean, and it doesn't mean that I don't have moments of loneliness, and I crave companionship and all of those things. But my life is so filled with stuff that I love doing, helping Greta to become a best-selling author.
Yeah.
that literally gives me goosebumps, or being able to have talks with young people. One of my former students called me today and left me the most beautiful voicemail. And, just being able to have those. I don't ever want to miss the blessing that God has right before me because I'm
Yeah.
looking for some other blessings somewhere
Yeah.
else. I don't want to be that kid in the kingdom where I don't recognize the blessings that are before me. And at the end of the day, I try to create my story. We joked earlier in this interview about the run-ons and the overthinking, right? And the list. And what did you say? Put a period to
Put a
it,
period, right.
delete. Like,
Right.
that's some stuff that we have to
Yeah.
put a period to and delete, and not because it it was bad. We talk about in the publishing where some things end up on the editing floor. Maybe they'll end up in the next book. Like,
Yeah.
we try to shove so much stuff into one bound book. Like, no, maybe this is supposed to be a series. Maybe it's supposed to be for later in your life. But truly learning to surrender and love your story, and recognizing that it's a process. And I think that's the hard part, especially for educated people.
Mhm.
We always like, no, this is, I did this, and so this adds up to this, and so it's supposed to be here. But no, like, just sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride.
Yeah.
Really do.
Enjoy the ride. And while you're on that ride, on Amazon and purchase
I like the way you
all
think.
4 of those books, all published through 220. And so if you are listening to this and you're like, okay, this was my sign, this was my confirmation, right? To start writing my story, to fall in love with my story, to share my story. We would love to hear your story and be a partner with you in sharing your story. And so, in addition to being an author, Jamie is also the chief marketing director, chief marketing officer of 220 Publishing, 220 Communications as a whole, and is able to really help articulate your book in a way that amplifies it to the world. And so, if you are interested, you can go to 220books.com. You'll find out all the information that you need to know. Go to amazon.com to purchase the books and fall in love with your story. If nothing else, even if it's just journaling or sharing it with someone verbally,
Okay.
fall in love with your story. And on that note, Jamie, close it out however you see fit. If you want to pray, you want to whatever, close it out for the night.
I just want to thank everybody for listening to this podcast. We really want Level Up to be the space where you truly are encouraged to love your story. It is through other people's voices sometimes that we're able to embrace the voice that's speaking in our own hearts. And so I just want to thank you guys for being here. Continue to share this podcast, and as Stephanie so beautifully articulated, recognize this. Even if it impacts one person, if it inspires one person, you did exactly what you were supposed to do. Don't ever minimize your experiences. Don't ever sell yourself short. I didn't become an author to get rich and, be a bestseller. If those things happen, amen. But I really just wanted to inspire people to recognize the beauty in their own lives and their own stories. So, you guys stay with us on this journey. We have amazing authors that are coming down the pipeline, and we hope that you'll be our guest one day. So, until next time, level up,
Level up.
level up. We'll see you guys next week.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thanks, sister.